Greetings. Wishing all a happy new year. We're here today with the S.H.E Gallery. We're going to be talking about urban art and street art. Looking forward to having y'all call in today. We'd like to welcome you, all of our viewers, to the first of 10 episodes of S.H.E Gallery talk show sessions. I write Trickster, and I will be your host as we engage into this urban art scene and discourse and have an in-depth talk about graffiti and street art. This series will be interactive, so please call in at 312-738-1060. Additionally, if you have any further questions or require any further information, I'll get the information here for you, and you can log on S.H.E Gallery's website. All right. So hopefully we did some good marketing, and we're going to get some good calls tonight. Our topic again being our series of presentations on graffiti and graffiti art. So give us a call. We're going to have a great talk about it. We're going to have a 10-episode session which will entail different aspects of graffiti and graffiti art around the world. We have a caller. You want to take a call right now? Okay, go ahead, caller.
Brother. This is Taco Box.
What up, Bobs? How you doing, brother?
Man, chilling, man. I'm glad to see this jumping off.
Yeah, we're just getting it started. How you doing this evening?
Holding on, man. Hanging in there, bro.
Okay. What's your question today?
Good, well, I really don't have any questions because, I was there too. So, I'm just waiting to see what y'all gonna get into, bro.
Okay, well, again, like we mentioned before, we're going to have a 10-episode discourse on graffiti and street art here in Chicago and abroad across the world. It's going to have 10 different categories, and each of the categories will be connected to each other so that we can relate different aspects of the art form as we see it. Glad to have you calling in tonight. Man, definitely a good close friend of mine. Stay tuned and listen to some good questions. Call again if you have some questions or concerns.
Word up. Will do, bro.
All right, looking forward to it. Have a great evening. Okay, so throughout this series, by episode, we will review different topical content as it relates to graffiti and graffiti art in a cultural and an academic perspective. We'll plan to have some guests at some point throughout the series, and in the advent that certain guests can't make it or we have scheduling conflicts, we will substitute that with different topical content and multimedia. Okay, so again, welcome to S.H.E Gallery. I'm Trickster. I'll be your host for this session. So tonight's focal topic is on the origins of graffiti and street art and the phenomenon collectively. So feel free to give us a call here. We're live. We're online also at cantv.org/hotline. Alternatively, you can see the number listed below and you can give us a call, and if you have any questions or concerns or anything you want to share with us tonight. So again, the phenomenon of graffiti. So when we think of the phenomenon of graffiti art, a phenomenon is something that happens, spontaneously, randomly, and graffiti happened pretty spontaneously and randomly. So primarily, if we look at its early resurgence during the 50s, coming in the U.S. inner cities, namely New York and some of the top 3 cities, California and Chicago, we can see different reasons for why graffiti and graffiti art resurfaced rather, because it is a more ancient art form. It's been around a lot longer, but in its modern manifestation, which we are looking at in this current era. So during the 50s and the 60s, this phenomenon just came out of nowhere. Kids just took it upon themselves to initiate this art form and to spread it across the world. Any comments or concerns, please give us a call at 312-738-1060. Okay, we're going to switch over to some content here and look at some pictures while I go over some discourse. Okay, we're going to go through a few pictures and imagery to give some reference to some of the topics that we're going to go through. Graffiti. Now this image here projects some artwork here that says jazzy, and if you look at it and you look at it in the context of all the other advertisements around it, which are also, a lot of people have referenced certain types of advertising as eyesores, consumerism and things of that nature. But in this depiction here, we have a police officer looking at some graffiti, and he said, aha, graffiti, out of all the other different types of advertising that is available. The reason we're referencing this picture is to give reference to what graffiti is. It looks out of place. It looks unorthodox. It looks out of the line. It looks out of the ordinary. So that's how a lot of people have a look at graffiti and graffiti art. They consider it eyesore. Some people consider it to be a challenge. But when you get into the more artistic aspects of it, it gives us more reference to what it can be and what it's evolving to become. All right, this next picture that we're looking at, this is a picture from research that was collected during the 70s, through the 70s and the 60s, a collective project on research on graffiti and its growth and prevalence throughout from the 30s to the 90s. The reason we're referencing this is because, unbeknownst to a lot of artists and writers, that this topic has been researched quite thoroughly as into motivations, why it's being done. Since that's our topic, is the phenomenon in this episode, how it arose, how it became about, why do kids engage in it. So that's our focal point. So give us a call if you have any information or references that you'd like to share or comments. Again, we're live on cantv.org/hotline, CanTV channel 21. So, in looking at this research, during the 30s, there wasn't a whole lot of reference to graffiti being done. There were some here and there, mostly in political respects, and on through the 50s. So right around the 50s is when this resurgence occurred. So if we look here, we see in the 60s there was a resurgence, and graffiti started, becoming really active in all of the inner cities and started becoming really a global culture. So the research went up at this time during the 60s. So in the 70s, in its heyday, in its golden era, it boomed. It went up a whole lot. So that gives credence to the movement collectively. And then during the 80s and 90s, as it started to decline on certain trains and in certain places, there was a little less research. But onward to the 2000s and the current era, there's been a huge resurgence again. And so this research needs to be updated. And this is the reason why I'm presenting some of this, so that we have reference to this. Okay, moving right along. So that was a reference to graffiti research. And then some of the more detail of that research included what type of graffiti and street art that they found. Some of it was cultural based. Meaning, with different movements relating to social movements and stuff. Some of it was representative of being something preventative graffiti, something motivational, things like, have a good day or things of that nature. Some of them were aesthetic, dealing with the calligraphy and the calligraphist. Some of it was folkloric, where they, have urban legends, or they, talk of different folk heroes or things of that nature. And some of it was linguistical. Some of it was gendered, relating to male, female, or gender roles. And some of it was just about popular culture and things of that nature. So, in retrospect, if we look at this graffiti and we think about to what extent that this was researched, we can give credence to it, to why it's done. So people have been trying to find out why and what motivates us to do this as it relates to this phenomenon of graffiti and street art. Okay, so moving right along. When we think of graffiti and we think of advertising, we can see different things. So graffiti collectively is many things. I mean, mainstream society has adapted it and commercialized it. This next image we're going to look at, and then we're going to see if we have any new callers, is a depiction of all of the art forms that were in existence at this time, from the 40s to 2010, to fairly more recently, about a decade ago or so. So from the 40s, some of the more popular art forms that were available, that were active, as we look closer here, were art brut, action painting, and lettrism. Lettrism being using letter forms and abstracted letter forms and collage and other mediums was a genre in itself. And then action painting was dealing with expressionistic works of painting, were dealing with movement and color. So with the advent of spray paint, which was invented here in Illinois during the 40s and the 50s, it laid a whole new avenue for different types of sub-mediums here. Advertising aesthetic, activist art, lowbrow art. So that was from the 40s to the 50s. And then in the 60s, when the happenings movement, when people started being more expressive in environments, using artistic mediums, and then with the advent of pop art, with Warhol, which a lot of artists may be familiar with Warhol, and then some of the other art forms, situationist art, and then there was outsider art. And this was between the 60s and the 70s. And let's focus on outsider art for a moment. Its term denotes many things. Outsider, people who aren't accepted into art galleries. Now, the interesting story about outsider art is that their work was also rejected from mainstream art galleries of their time during the 50s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. And this outsider art was a movement to take art and artists away from those mainstream galleries that had a monopoly on the arts. And so outsider arts were rejected, just as graffiti artists were rejected from the galleries at our onset. And so from outsider art, and right around the same time, and here we have the birth from the late 60s to the 70s of graffiti and street art. So graffiti and street art has since encompassed all other art forms, all other genres of art, and we incorporate all of these specific material uses and painting techniques into using a rapid medium for rapid application, which is why spray paint was the primary medium, because it allowed you that rapid application, and you could achieve any number of effects, which were the defining points of all these other genres, because most of them had specific applications of how their material was applied. And so we were able to replicate these, using a sprayable aerosol medium. So during the 70s, right when graffiti really started becoming prevalent, it dominated the art world. And since then, there have been no other art movements that have been as effective in encompassing a collective global audience, because it is a youth-derived culture. That is one important thing I want to emphasize. Again, we are on CAN TV, channel 21, TV 21, cantv.org, /hotline. You can give us a call. You can tune in there. The number will be on display shortly, and I will display that information shortly. So in continuance, graffiti and street art became developed into other styles as well. It has many derivative genres within itself, one being wild style. And then everything preceding graffiti from the 70s forward, every other art form was derived or had derivative works that were based on graffiti. So we have neo-expressionism, protograph, outsider graph, which came in the 80s and 90s, and Basquiat was a neo-expressionist. His works, which his works are currently pervading the art world currently now. His work has held the #1 spot for American art for the past 10 years. And he was essentially a graffiti artist when he started. His work is the highest selling artwork currently in the world, or one of the highest selling artworks in the world. But I referenced that in reference to his development in the world of graffiti and street art coming out of New York, Basquiat. Moving along, we have deconstructivist architecture, internet culture, public art, appropriation art, and conceptual art. Public art. Illinois and Chicago is one of the primary proponents of public art. We kind of originated the whole concept of doing art out in the public as well. So that's just to give you a brief reference to the extent of how graffiti and street art has pervaded the art world. It's one of the most widely accepted art forms that there is. All right. Tuning back live. Again, the phenomenon of graffiti. My introduction to graffiti coming into Chicago was during the 70s here in Chicago, on the west side of Chicago. I was a dancer, a b-boy, and graffiti came second nature to me. I started decorating my clothes and things of that nature as a dancer, and it allowed me to be expressive, and then that became a vocation. It became something that I did on a regular basis for different purposes, for clients and things of that nature. At the time, I mean, there was a lot of things going on in the city that a person could get into, a youth. Some of them maybe not too well to do, some of them, such as gangs and crime and things of that nature, or more serious things as crime. And this thing was an outlet for me. It had more of a positive connotation, and it creative and things of that nature, and it took me away from that, and I'm thankful for it. Yeah. So the phenomenon of graffiti, I mean, again, it started out in New York. It started out, youth took it upon themselves to create this group, a camaraderie of artists who traveled around and left their markings and left specialty writing and tags, and it grew to become large-scale murals and other things of that nature. And since then, it's grown to every form of industry: clothing, fashion, architecture, gallery art, technology, chemical-based things, perfumes, things of this nature. We have a lot of artists that have taken these principles of graffiti and street art to other avenues, and that's what our focal point will be for this series, is to delve into all of these tenets of the movement, from their most primitive to their most evolved. S.H.E Gallery here in Chicago, they've been instrumental in promoting different aspects of urban culture, and I look forward to working with them, developing in different areas as well. All right, give us a call. We're live at CAN TV with S.H.E Gallery. We are talking about street art and urban art forms in our modern society. Please join us. Give us a call, 312-738-1060. In a moment, we can go through and look at some more different aspects of what we've been talking about as far as where graph and graffiti is now, where it can be going, and how to properly have youth engage it. We're going to look at some more pictures shortly, and I have a video or excerpt I'd like to share with you. All right, we were talking about different aspects of graffiti and where things are going now. I'll give you an idea of to what extent it's going. They have technology-based devices. This gentleman here is wearing a device called the iWriter. It allows you to interact with digital technology, and this gentleman uses it it's called the iWriter. It's devised for graffiti artist who had some form of an accident or something. He was paralyzed, and he continues doing his art using this technology. So this was graffiti inspired, graffiti based. We have hardware, technology devices, things like laser based imagery and things of that nature as well. Graffiti that's being done with lasers and things in the public setting, in public installations. We have technology-based cans and techniques to deliver different aspects of graffiti. We have digital boards where kids can be interactive and use digital screens to produce artwork. So this technology, I mean, it's been crafted and catered for these different applications. And so being mindful of that, where could this art form go from here? Here's some sculpture being done, 3D printed sculpture. So different aspects and different applications. So we've been, here's another sculpture. So again, as I said previously, graffiti has been evolving in different ways. Here's some large-scale sculpture that's featured in museums around the world. So we've gone into multiple different types of mediums. Wood, metals, stonework, architecture. Here's some cologne, graffiti artist design. It's good scent. It has a graffiti vial for it or what have you. More woodwork, wood sculpture. So it's in different mediums. And here's some architecture. Here's a building designed by a graffiti artist. Fully inside and out. It fully has, you know, the look of graffiti arrows and the use of arrows which signify movement. So it's a really evolved art form. It's inside, we have it in medicine. They use different tenets of hip hop to reference different aspects in science and health and technology. So it's evolving, it's growing. Again, the phenomenon of graffiti, where did it come from? What is it? Where is it going? Where has it been? All right, tune in with us at S.H.E Gallery on CAN TV. Numbers 312-738-1060. All right, no callers as of yet. Give us a call when you can if you have any questions or concerns. All right, we're going to keep perusing on. We're going to look at some different aspects of the art. We've been going through the technology things. Again, like people are using LEDs now to simulate the different looks of painted materials. So that means there's commerce, there's technology involved with these things. All right. One aspect I think that's important to mention again is it being a youth culture. Youth created this culture. It wasn't passed down from mainstream society. So that's an important point to emphasize as we look at youth and we look at alternatives to other negative lifestyles or negative patterns that they could have chose. We have this medium, it's nonviolent. There have been some challenges with it, but at this point, there's a lot of alternatives that are available and careers that can be developed from the use of art and development of this art form as it currently exists now. Another important thing I think as it relates to writing in general is it relates to education. Writing in general is very important to us as human beings. It allows us to be reflective in the sense of writing being the reflection of our thoughts. And so thoughts can be very varied and wide and complex. So this medium allows us to express ourselves in a way that can be depictive of that. We have 1 minute left. Again, we're going to have a 10-part series through the coming every Monday from 7 p.m. CAN TV, Channel 21. Give us a call, 312-738-1060. Thanks again for tuning in with us, and I look forward to seeing you in the next session.